The desert highway stretched out before him like a ribbon of regret shimmering in the late afternoon heat. Wyatt Garrison gripped the handlebars of his Harley-Davidson, feeling the familiar throb of the engine between his legs, a pulse that had been his only constant for 41 years. 63 years old, and he was finally going home. The wind tore at his grayed beard, whipped through the patches on his leather vest. Hell's Angels, Death Head insignia, Oak Ridge chapter. Once those symbols had meant everything. Brotherhood, freedom, a family he chose instead of the one he was born into. Now, as the exit sign for Oak Ridge appeared on the horizon, Wyatt wasn't so sure what they meant anymore. His phone vibrated in his jacket pocket. He'd received the message 3 hours ago just as he was leaving Albuquerque. Short, cryptic, terrifying. Your mother needs you. Come home. Now, no name, no explanation. Just those 7 words that had sent him racing across 2 states, pushing the Harley harder than he had in years. Wyatt had left Oak Ridge 8 years ago, left in anger, left in the middle of the night with nothing but the roar of his engine and the sound of his mother's voice calling after him, begging him to stay. You can't live like this forever, Wyatt, with those people. That's not a life it's running. He told her she didn't understand, told her the club was his family now, told her things he wished he could take back, and then he'd left. For 8 years, he'd convinced himself it was better this way. Evelyn Garrison was a strong woman. She'd raised him alone after his father died. She didn't need him. She was better off without the chaos he brought into her life. But now, as Wyatt took the exit toward Oak Ridge, his hands were shaking on the handlebars. The flashback hit him like a fist to the gut. 2016, a cold November night. His mother's kitchen, warm and smelling of apple pie. She'd baked it special because he was visiting, trying to reach him the only way she knew how. Evelyn had been 75 then, but still sharp, still strong. Her hair had gone completely white, but her eyes were the same steel blue that had terrified him as a child when he'd done wrong. Wyatt, I'm asking you to think about your future. You're 55 years old. How much longer can you live on the road? As long as I want, Mom. I'm not some kid you can lecture anymore. I'm not lecturing. I'm worried. When was the last time you had a real home? When was the last time you... The club is my home. Sterling Deck, the others, they're my brothers. They're not your family, Wyatt. I'm your family. You don't get to decide what family means to me. The words had come out harder than he'd intended. He'd seen her flinch, seen the hurt flash across her face, but his pride wouldn't let him take it back. Fine, then go. Go back to your brothers, but don't come back here expecting me to always be waiting. Maybe I won't come back at all. Maybe that would be easier for both of us. The silence that followed had been deafening. Wyatt had stood up, grabbed his jacket, and walked out. He'd fired up the Harley right there in the driveway, loud enough to wake the neighbors, and tore off into the night. He'd told himself she didn't mean it, that it was just anger talking. But 8 years had passed, 8 years without a visit, 8 years of brief, stilted phone calls on birthdays and Christmas, 8 years of telling himself it was fine, that she understood that they'd fix it eventually. Eventually. That word had a way of stretching into forever. Wyatt rolled into Oak Ridge just as the sun was beginning its descent toward the western mountains. The town looked older than he remembered, smaller, like it had shrunk in on itself during his absence. Main Street was half empty. Storefronts that had been thriving businesses were now boarded up, faded for lease signs and dusty windows. Henderson's Hardware gone. The diner where he'd had his first job washing dishes closed. Even the old movie theater had been converted into some kind of antique mall that looked like it hadn't seen a customer in months. This was what happened to small towns in America. The young people left. The industries died. What remained was a skeleton of what had been populated by those too old or too stubborn to leave to Manero, or those who had nowhere else to go. Wyatt slowed as he passed Earl's Corner Market. At least that was still standing. Earl had been his father's best friend back when Robert Garrison was still alive, back before 1981, before the accident at the steel mill that had made Wyatt fatherless at 20. He thought about stopping, thought about going in and asking Earl what was happening with his mother. But something dark and urgent was pulling him forward. Get to the house, now. The familiar streets blurred past Maple Avenue, Oak Street, Cherry Lane. The developers hadn't been very creative with the names. Then Sycamore Drive, where the houses got a bit larger, the yards a bit more spacious. His childhood home was at the end of Sycamore, a modest 2-story with blue shutters and a wraparound porch his father had built by hand. Wyatt had spent countless summer evenings on that porch learning how to fix engines, while his dad talked about integrity, about being a man who kept his promises. A man's only as good as his word, son. Remember that. When everything else falls away, money, possessions, even people, your word is all you've got. Don't ever break it. As the house came into view, Wyatt's blood went cold. There was a black pickup truck parked in the driveway. Newer model tinted windows. Two men stood on the front porch smoking cigarettes. They wore jeans and leather jackets, but not the kind bikers wore. These were fashion leather, city leather, and they were standing at his mother's door like they owned the place. Wyatt slowed the Harley, his mind racing. He was still a block away. The men hadn't noticed him yet. One of them laughed at something the other said. Then he flicked his cigarette into Evelyn's flower bed, the roses she'd tended for 30 years, and ground it out with his boot. Wyatt's hands tightened on the handlebars. The second man glanced down the street, spotted the Harley, said something to his companion. Both men straightened, suddenly alert. For a moment, the four of them, Wyatt and the two strangers, locked eyes across the distance. Then the men moved. Fast. They climbed into the pickup, and before Wyatt could accelerate, they were backing out of the driveway, tires squealing. Wyatt revved the engine, ready to chase them, but something stopped him. Something was wrong here. Very wrong. The front door of the house was open, just slightly, a crack of darkness in the fading daylight. His mother never left the door open. Wyatt parked the Harley on the street and climbed off his knees, protesting. 63 years old, and his body reminded him of every mile he'd ridden, every fight he'd been in, every crash and tumble and hard landing. The pickup truck had disappeared around the corner. Gone. Wyatt walked up the driveway, his boots crunching on gravel. The roses in the flower bed were dying, brown at the edges. His mother would never let her roses die. He climbed the porch steps. One of them creaked, the third one from the left. It had creaked for 40 years. Some things never changed. The front door was ajar about 6 inches. Wyatt's heart was hammering now. He reached for the door, then stopped. His hand went instead to the knife on his belt. Old habit. Never walk into an unknown situation unarmed. He pushed the door open. Mom, it's Wyatt. Silence. The living room was dim, curtains drawn. But even in the half-light, Wyatt could see that something was very, very wrong. Furniture overturned, the coffee table on its side. Evelyn's favorite lamp, the Tiffany-style one she'd inherited from her mother, shattered on the floor. Glass everywhere, catching the last rays of sunlight like scattered diamonds. A chair knocked over. The family portrait that had hung above the fireplace for as long as Wyatt could remember him at age 7. His mother and father smiling, a picture of happiness, before everything fell apart, now lay face down on the floor. The frame cracked. And blood. Not a lot, but enough. Drops on the hardwood floor, leading toward the kitchen. Mom Wyatt's voice came out raw, desperate. He moved through the living room, stepping over debris, following the trail of blood. The kitchen door was open. And there on the floor, beside the old oak table where Wyatt had eaten thousands of meals, where he'd done his homework and learned to play cards and listened to his father's stories, lay Evelyn Garrison. His mother, 83 years old, wearing a floral dress and a cardigan. One slipper on, one off. Her white hair matted with blood. A gash above her left eyebrow still weeping red. Her face pale. Eyes closed. Not moving. Mom. The word came out like a roar, like an animal sound torn from somewhere deep in Wyatt's chest. He was across the kitchen in 3 strides, dropping to his knees beside her, his hands hovering over her body, not knowing where to touch, terrified he'd hurt her more. Mom, can you hear me? Her eyelids fluttered. A small moan escaped her lips. She was alive. Thank God she was alive. Wyatt's hands were shaking as he checked her pulse, weak but steady. He leaned close, feeling for her breath. There, shallow but there. It's okay, Mom, I'm here. I've got you. You're gonna be okay. He didn't know if he was telling her or himself. His phone. He needed his phone. Call 911, get an ambulance. Wyatt fumbled in his jacket pocket, nearly dropped the phone, managed to dial with trembling fingers. 911, what's your emergency? My mother, she's been attacked. She's unconscious. There's blood. I need an ambulance. Now. Sir, I need you to stay calm. What's your location? He gave the address, his voice cracking. The dispatcher asked him questions. Was she breathing? Was she conscious? What were her injuries? And Wyatt answered on autopilot while his eyes scanned his mother's still form. Bruises. He could see them now. Dark purple marks on her arm. Defensive wounds. She tried to fight back. His mother, 83 years old, had fought back against whoever did this. Rage bloomed in Wyatt's chest, hot and black and all-consuming. Sir, the ambulance is on its way. Is she responsive at all? She made a sound. She's breathing, but she won't wake up. Don't move her. Keep her warm and comfortable. Help is coming. Wyatt ended the call. He shrugged off his leather jacket and draped it gently over his mother's small frame. She looked so fragile. When had she gotten so small? In his memory, Evelyn Garrison had always been a force of nature, unbreakable. Now she looked like a breath of wind could scatter her to dust. "I'm here, Mom," he whispered, taking her hand. Her skin was so cold. "I'm sorry I stayed away. I'm sorry for everything I said. But I'm here now. I'm not leaving. I promise." Her fingers twitched in his, just slightly. But enough. Tears were running down Wyatt's face now into his beard. He didn't try to stop them. He just held his mother's hand and waited for the sound of sirens. That's when he noticed it. Clutched in Evelyn's other hand, crumpled and stained with blood, was a piece of paper. Wyatt gently pried it loose. It was a letter, official looking, a notice of some kind. He smoothed it out, reading by the fading light from the kitchen window. Redwood Financial Group final notice. Account. Evelyn Garrison. Outstanding balance $47,000. Payment due. Immediately. At the bottom, someone had written in red marker the letters angry and aggressive, pay or face consequences. Wyatt stared at the paper, his mind struggling to process $47,000. His mother owed someone $47,000. How? Why, Evelyn had always been careful with money. After his father died, she'd worked 2 jobs to keep the house to raise Wyatt. She'd never been wealthy, but she'd never been careless either. What the hell was Redwood Financial Group? Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Wyatt folded the paper and tucked it into his pocket. Then he returned to his mother's side, taking her hand again. "Hold on, Mom. Just hold on." The ambulance arrived 6 minutes later. To Wyatt, it felt like hours. The emergency room at St. Mary's Hospital smelled like antiseptic and desperation. Wyatt paced the waiting area, unable to sit, unable to be still. His leather vest drew stares from the other people waiting. A woman with a crying child, an elderly man clutching his chest, a teenager with a badly swollen ankle. Wyatt didn't care. Let them stare. He'd ridden with his mother in the ambulance, holding her hand the whole way. The paramedics had been professional, efficient. They'd asked him questions he couldn't answer. Was she on medication? Did she have any allergies? When did this happen? I don't know. He'd said over and over, I don't know, I've been away. Away, such a small word for 8 years of absence. At the hospital, they'd taken Evelyn straight back, whisked her away on a gurney while a nurse told Wyatt he needed to wait. Fill out paperwork, let the doctors work. So he waited, and paced, and tried not to think about what he'd seen. His mother's blood on the kitchen floor. The terror she must have felt. The pain. Mr. Garrison. Wyatt spun around. A doctor stood there, a woman in her early 50s, with kind eyes and tired lines around her mouth. Her name tag read Dr. Catherine Hayes. "That's me. How is she?" "Is she?" "Your mother is stable. She's regained consciousness." The relief was so intense, Wyatt had to grab the back of a chair to steady himself. "She has a moderate concussion." Dr. Hayes continued, 3 broken ribs and extensive bruising. "We're running more tests, but I believe she'll recover." However, she paused and Wyatt's brief moment of relief evaporated. "However, Mr. Garrison, this isn't the first time your mother has been admitted to this hospital with injuries consistent with assault." Wyatt felt like he'd been punched in the gut. What Dr. Hayes consulted a tablet in her hand. "In the past 6 months, Mrs. Garrison has been to our emergency room 3 times. The first time she had a broken wrist. She said she'd fallen. The second time she had bruising on her torso and a black eye. Again, she said she'd fallen. This is the 3rd time. And frankly, Mr. Garrison, these are not the injuries of someone who simply falls. Are you saying someone's been hurting her? For 6 months, I'm saying that the pattern is concerning. We've reported our suspicions to the authorities as required by law, but your mother has always insisted her injuries were accidental." Wyatt's hands clenched into fists. "Can I see her?" "Yes, but please keep it brief. She needs rest." Dr. Hayes led him through a maze of corridors to a small room in the ICU. The sight of his mother in that hospital bed, dwarfed by white sheets and surrounded by beeping machines, nearly brought Wyatt to his knees. Evelyn's eyes were open. When she saw him, tears began streaming down her weathered cheeks. "Wyatt," she whispered, "you came." He was at her bedside in an instant, taking her hand, careful of the IV line taped to her wrist. "Of course I came, Mom. Of course I did. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you had to see. Don't apologize. Just tell me who did this to you." Evelyn's eyes filled with fear. Real, visceral fear. "I can't. Mom, Wyatt, you have to leave. You have to go. If they know you're here, if they think I told you anything, they'll, what? Who are they? They'll kill me," Evelyn whispered. "They said they would. They said if I talked to anyone, if I went to the police, they'd kill me. Wyatt felt something cold and hard settle in his chest, a familiar feeling, one he hadn't felt in years, the feeling that came before violence, before someone got hurt. Tell me their names, Mom. I can't. Please, just go. Forget you saw me like this. Forget I'm not going anywhere and I'm not forgetting anything. I need you to tell me who did this. Evelyn closed her eyes and more tears leaked out. The company, she said finally. The loan company. I borrowed money 2 years ago. Just $15,000 to fix the roof. The winter storms had damaged it and I couldn't afford. Her voice trailed off. What company, Mom? Redwood Financial Group. The name from the letter, the $47,000 debt. You borrowed $15,000. They're saying you owe 47. Evelyn nodded weakly. The interest, it's 35%, and it compounds. I tried to pay Wyatt. I paid the minimum every month, but it just kept growing. And then I couldn't pay anymore. My Social Security barely covers the utilities and food. I had nothing left. So they did this. They beat you. They came to collect. I didn't have the money. They got angry. Wyatt stood up, his entire body rigid with fury. What are their names, Wyatt? No, you can't. Name's Mom. I don't know their real names. There's two men who come. They call one of them the Ox. Big man, scary. He's the one who... She couldn't finish. Wyatt leaned down and kissed his mother's forehead gentle, as he could manage while rage boiled in his veins. I'm going to fix this, I promise. Please don't do anything dangerous. Please, Wyatt, I can't lose you, not again. You're not going to lose me. I'm not leaving. Not this time. There was a knock at the door. A police officer stepped in, young, maybe 30, with a notebook in hand. Mr. Garrison, I'm Officer Jennings. I need to ask your mother some questions about what happened. Wyatt looked at his mother. She shook her head almost imperceptibly. She was too scared to talk. Officer, she needs rest right now. Doctor's orders. Jennings looked like he wanted to argue, but Dr. Hayes appeared in the doorway. I'm afraid Mr. Garrison is right. Mrs. Garrison needs to sleep. You can come back tomorrow. Jennings nodded reluctantly and left. Wyatt stayed with his mother until she drifted off the pain medication, pulling her under. Her hand went slack in his. He stood there for a long time just watching her breathe. Then he walked out of the hospital and into the parking lot where his Harley waited under the fluorescent lights. Wyatt pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the one he needed. Sterling Blackwood answered on the second ring. Bulldog, that Jack Wyatt, hadn't been called by his road name in months. It felt both familiar and foreign. Yeah, it's me. Hell, man, it's been a minute. What's going on? I need you, Sterling. There was a pause. In the background, Wyatt could hear the sounds of a bar music laughter, pool balls clacking. Talk to me, Wyatt told him. Kept it brief. His mother, the beating, the loan sharks, the debt. When he finished, Sterling was quiet for a long moment. Where are you, Oak Ridge? Arizona. I can be there in 10 hours, maybe less. Sterling, I need to do this right, not the old way, not with fists and blood. My mother's already suffered enough. Then how, I don't know yet, but I need backup, someone I can trust. You got it, brother. I'll leave within the hour. Thank you. Don't thank me. We're family. That's what family does. Wyatt ended the call and stood there in the parking lot looking up at the desert sky. Stars were beginning to appear sharp and bright against the deepening blue. A memory came to him. His father teaching him how to navigate by the stars. If you're ever lost, son, look up. The stars will guide you home. But Wyatt wasn't lost anymore. He was home, and he was about to go to war. Wyatt didn't sleep that night. He'd checked into a motel on the outskirts of town, a depressing place with thin walls and the smell of stale cigarettes. He'd lain on the bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. By morning, he had a plan, or at least the beginning of one. First step information. He walked into the Oak Ridge Sheriff's Department at 8 a.m. just as they were opening. The building was small brick with the Arizona state flag hanging limply in the still morning air. The receptionist, a heavyset woman in her 60s, looked up when he entered. Her eyes went immediately to his vest, to the patches and insignia. Her expression cooled. Help you, I need to speak with the sheriff. Regarding an assault, my mother, Evelyn Garrison. She's at St. Mary's. The woman's expression softened slightly. Oh, I heard about Evelyn. I'm so sorry. Sheriff Holbrook is in. Let me see if he's available. She picked up a phone, spoke briefly, then nodded at Wyatt. He'll see you. Down the hall, last door on the left. Wyatt walked down the narrow corridor past bulletin boards covered with wanted posters and community announcements. The building felt tired, underfunded, like everything else in Oak Ridge. The last door on the left was open. Inside, behind a cluttered desk, sat Sheriff Randall Holbrook. Wyatt stopped in the doorway, surprise flooding through him. Randy, the sheriff, looked up and his eyes went wide. Wyatt Garrison, holy hell. Randall Holbrook had been Randy Holbrook when they were kids. Wyatt's best friend from first grade through high school. They'd played Little League together, stolen their first beers together, double-dated to prom. Then life had taken them in different directions. Wyatt to the open road and the Hells Angels. Randy to the police academy and a career in law enforcement. They hadn't spoken in over 20 years. Randy stood up and came around the desk. He'd put on weight, lost some hair. Deep lines creased his forehead, but the eyes were the same. Sharp, intelligent. When did you get into town yesterday? I heard about your mom. I'm sorry, Wyatt, I really am. Are you investigating? Randy's expression darkened. We're trying. Evelyn won't talk to us. She insists she fell. She's scared. They threatened to kill her if she talked. Who's they? Redwood Financial Group. You know them? Randy's jaw tightened. He motioned for Wyatt to close the door, then sat back down behind his desk. Yeah, I know them. Tell me. Redwood Financial is a predatory lending operation. They target elderly folks, people in desperate situations, offer loans with impossible interest rates. Then when people can't pay, they send collectors. Collectors who break bones, we suspect so, but we've never been able to prove it. Victims are too scared to testify, and Redwood has lawyers, good ones. Every time we get close to building a case, they shut us down. Wyatt leaned forward. Who runs it? Randy pulled a file from his desk drawer and slid it across. Inside was a photo of a man in his mid-50s, handsome in a cold sort of way. Expensive suit, slicked back hair, Vincent Maddox. He opened Redwood about 5 years ago. On paper, it's all legitimate, licensed lender, files all the right paperwork. But word on the street is he's got connections. Organized crime, maybe trafficking. We can't prove any of it. Wyatt stared at the photo. Something about the face was familiar. Then it hit him. I know this guy. Randy looked surprised. You do 1997? Flagstaff, there was a situation, territorial dispute between the Angels and another crew. Maddox was running with them. Different name back then. Vince something. The memory was coming back now. A bar fight that had turned into something worse. Knives, guns. Wyatt had been younger then, more reckless. He'd put a man in the hospital. Vince had been there lurking in the background. Smart enough not to get directly involved, but definitely part of the operation. He's dangerous, Wyatt said. I know. That's why I'm telling you to be careful. I assume you're not just here to chat about old times. I want justice for my mother. Justice or revenge? Is there a difference? Randy sighed. Yeah, there is. Justice happens in a courtroom. Revenge happens in an alley. And I can't have you going down that road, Wyatt. Not in my town. Your town let my mother get beaten within an inch of her life. 3 times. We've tried, not hard enough. The words hung in the air between them. Randy's face flushed. I have 4 deputies and a budget that's been cut every year for the past decade. I'm doing the best I can with what I've got. It's not enough. Then help me do it the right way. Convince your mother to testify. Give me something I can use to get a warrant to build a real case. She won't testify. She's too scared. Then my hands are tied. Wyatt stood up. Then I'll untie them. Wyatt, thanks for the information, Randy. He turned to leave. Wait. Wyatt stopped. Randy pulled another file from his desk. This one was thinner, older. He hesitated, then pushed it across the desk. There's something else you should know. About Maddox and about your father. Wyatt's blood went cold. What about my father? I wasn't sheriff back in 1981 when Robert died. But when I took this job, I went through old case files. Your dad's death was ruled an accident. Machinery malfunction at the steel mill. But there were questions. What kind of questions? A witness reported hearing Robert arguing with his supervisor the day before the accident. Something about safety violations. Payoffs. The witness said Robert was threatening to go to OSHA to report the mill for unsafe practices. Wyatt's hands were shaking as he opened the file. Inside were police reports yellowed with age. Witness statements. Photographs of the accident scene that made his stomach turn. The supervisor's name was Frank Brennan, Randy continued. He retired in 1995. Then in 2010, he became a consultant for Redwood Financial. You're saying Maddox knew the man who might have killed my father? I'm saying there's a connection. I don't know what it means. Brennan died in 2019, so we can't ask him. But I thought you should know. Wyatt closed the file, his mind reeling. This was bigger than a loan, bigger than broken ribs and threats. This was generational. Thank you, he said quietly. Wyatt, promise me you won't do anything stupid. I can't promise that. Then promise me you'll think about your mother, about what she needs. She needs you alive, not in prison, not in a grave. Wyatt looked at his old friend for a long moment. I'll think about it. He walked out of the sheriff's department into the bright Arizona morning. The sun was already hot, promising another scorching day. Wyatt's phone buzzed, a text from Sterling. 2 hours out. Where should I meet you? Wyatt texted back an address, the motel, then climbed on his Harley. But he didn't head back to the motel. He headed to the other side of town, to an address he'd found on the Redwood Financial letterhead. The building was nicer than Wyatt expected. 2 stories, freshly painted white, with a manicured lawn and a sign out front that looked professional. Respectable. Redwood Financial Group, your trusted partner in financial solutions. The lie of it made Wyatt's jaw clench. He parked the Harley out front, not bothering to hide his presence. Let them see him. Let them know he was here. Inside, the lobby was cool and modern, leather furniture, abstract art on the walls. A young receptionist sat behind a sleek desk typing on a computer. She looked up when Wyatt entered. Her professional smile faltered when she saw his vest, his beard, the hard look in his eyes. Can I help you? I need to speak with Vincent Maddox. Do you have an appointment? No. I'm sorry, but Mr. Maddox only sees clients by appointment. I'd be happy to schedule. Tell him it's about Evelyn Garrison. The receptionist's smile disappeared entirely. She picked up her phone, spoke quietly into it. Hung up. Someone will be down shortly. Please have a seat. Wyatt didn't sit. He stood in the middle of the lobby, hands hanging loose at his sides, watching the stairs. 3 minutes later, footsteps. Heavy ones. A man appeared at the top of the stairs. Massive. 6'5" at least, built like a linebacker who'd never stopped training. Shaved head. Flat nose that had been broken more than once. Small, cold eyes. This had to be the Ox. The man descended the stairs slowly, deliberately, trying to intimidate through size alone. Wyatt didn't move. The Ox reached the bottom of the stairs and crossed the lobby. He stood about 3 feet from Wyatt, looking down. Who are you, Evelyn Garrison's son? Something flickered in the Ox's eyes. Recognition, maybe a hint of concern. Mrs. Garrison isn't here. I know where she is. She's in the hospital, with broken ribs and a concussion, because of you. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm here to make this very simple. My mother's debt is paid. You don't contact her again. You don't go near her. You don't even think about her. Are we clear? The Ox smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Your mother owes Redwood Financial $47,000. That debt doesn't just disappear because you show up on a motorcycle and make threats. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact. You need to leave, now, not until I speak to Maddox. Mr. Maddox doesn't want to speak to you. Then he can tell me that himself. The tension in the room had ratcheted up to a breaking point. The receptionist had her hand on her phone, probably ready to call the police. Then from the top of the stairs, a voice, "It's all right, Dalton. I'll speak with him." Wyatt looked up. Vincent Maddox stood at the railing, looking down at them. He was dressed in an expensive suit, crisp white shirt, no tie. He looked exactly like his photograph. Cold, calculated, dangerous. Maddox descended the stairs with the easy confidence of a man who'd never truly been threatened in his own territory. "Mr. Garrison, I've heard about you. Please come up to my office. Let's talk like civilized men." Dalton, the Ox looked unhappy about this, but he stepped aside. Wyatt followed Maddox up the stairs, acutely aware of Dalton's presence behind him. He was being fiddled into enemy territory, outnumbered, probably outgunned if it came to that. But he didn't care. Maddox's office was on the second floor, spacious and expensively furnished. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Oak Ridge. A mahogany desk, leather chairs, framed certificates on the walls, all the trappings of legitimacy. "Please sit," Maddox said, gesturing to a chair. Wyatt remained standing. Maddox smiled slightly and sat behind his desk, folding his hands. "I remember you," he said. "Flagstaff, 1997. You put Danny Martinez in the hospital." Shattered his jaw. "Danny was a friend of mine. Danny pulled a knife on one of my brothers. And you responded with disproportionate force. That's your style, isn't it? Escalation. Violence. I'm not here to reminisce. No, you're here about your mother. Mrs. Garrison is a lovely woman. It's unfortunate that she found herself in financial difficulty. You mean it's unfortunate that you loaned her money at criminal interest rates and then sent your thugs to beat her when she couldn't pay?" Maddox's expression didn't change. "Redwood Financial is a licensed lender operating within Arizona state law. Our interest rates are clearly disclosed. Your mother signed a contract. a contract you knew she couldn't fulfill. We offer loans to people other institutions won't help. There's inherent risk in that. The interest rates reflect that risk. 35% isn't risk management. It's exploitation. It's business. And speaking of business, you're not your mother's power of attorney. You're not a co-signer on her loan. So legally, you have no standing in this matter. I'm not interested in legal standing. I'm interested in making sure my mother is safe. Then I suggest you encourage her to honor her obligations. The debt stands at $47,000. We expect payment. Or what? You'll send Dalton back. Have him break more of her bones. Maddox leaned back in his chair. Mr. Garrison, I'm going to be frank with you. Your mother is elderly. Accidents happen to elderly people. They fall, they forget to eat, they leave the stove on. Any number of tragic things could occur. It would be in everyone's best interest if her financial situation was resolved quickly. The threat wasn't even veiled. It was right there, naked and ugly. Wyatt's hands clenched into fists. You just threatened my mother's life. I made an observation about the risks faced by the elderly. Surely you misunderstood. I understood perfectly. Maddox smiled. 7 days, Mr. Garrison. Bring me $47,000 in 7 days and your mother's debt is cleared. She'll never hear from us again. And if I don't, then I suspect Mrs. Garrison will have another unfortunate accident. And this time she might not survive it. Wyatt took a step forward. Dalton moved to intercept, but Maddox held up a hand. You should think very carefully about your next move, Maddox said softly. I know who you are. I know what you're capable of. But this isn't 1997 and you're not a young man anymore. You're 63 years old. How do you think that ends for you if you come at me? I guess we'll find out. 7 days. Wyatt turned and walked out, Dalton following close behind. Neither spoke until Wyatt was out of the building back in the harsh sunlight. He climbed on his Harley, his entire body vibrating with a suppressed rage. 7 days to come up with $47,000. 7 days to protect his mother. 7 days to figure out how to take down a man who'd likely had his father killed and was now threatening his mother. Wyatt fired up the engine and headed back toward the motel. Sterling would be there soon, and then they'd figure out what came next. Because one thing was certain, Wyatt Garrison wasn't walking away. Not this time. Not ever again. His mother needed him, and he'd burn the whole damn town down before he'd let anyone hurt her again. The motel parking lot shimmered in the afternoon heat when Wyatt pulled in. The Harley's engine ticked as it cooled a rhythmic sound that had always calmed him. But today nothing could calm the storm raging inside his chest. He sat on the bike for a moment, staring at the motel room door. Number 7. Lucky number 7. Nothing about this felt lucky. The rumble of another motorcycle cut through the desert air. Deep, powerful, a sound Wyatt would recognize anywhere. He turned to see Sterling Blackwood rolling into the parking lot on a Road King black as midnight chrome gleaming, despite the dust of the highway. Sterling had always kept his bike immaculate. Some things never changed. Sterling pulled up next to Wyatt and killed the engine. For a moment, neither man moved. Then Sterling swung his leg over and stood pulling off his helmet. 66 years old, and Sterling still looked like he could tear through a wall. His hair had gone completely white, pulled back in a ponytail. Deep lines carved into his dark skin, each one a story of miles ridden and battles fought. His eyes, though, those were the same, sharp as broken glass. The two men looked at each other. Then Sterling stepped forward and pulled Wyatt into a crushing embrace. Brother, Sterling said simply. Brother, Wyatt replied. They separated, and Sterling studied Wyatt's face with the keen observation of someone who'd known him for 40 years. You look like hell. Feel worse. Tell me everything. All of it. They went inside the motel room. It was as depressing as Wyatt remembered from the night before. Thin carpet. Walls the color of old newspapers. A bed that sagged in the middle. But it was private, and right now privacy mattered. Wyatt laid it all out. His mother in the hospital. The debt. Redwood Financial. Vincent Maddox. The connection to his father's death 43 years ago. The 7-day deadline. Sterling listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. When Wyatt finished, Sterling was quiet for a long moment. This Maddox, he said finally. You said you recognized him from Flagstaff. Yeah. 1997. He was running with the Scorpions back then. The Scorpions got taken down by the feds in 2003. Racketeering, drug trafficking. Most of them went to prison. Maddox must have gotten out before the hammer dropped. Or he rolled on them. Witness protection, maybe. New name. New life. Wyatt shook his head. Doesn't matter how he did it. What matters is he's here now and he's threatening my mother. $47,000 in 7 days. Sterling rubbed his jaw. That's not impossible. I could probably put together 20 from my savings. Maybe you could sell the bike, get another 15, 20. We find the rest somehow. No, Sterling raised an eyebrow. No, if I pay him, it doesn't end. Men like Maddox, they're predators. They smell weakness and they exploit it. I pay this debt, he'll find another reason to come after her. Another fee, another interest charge. She'll never be free of him. So what's your plan? I need to make him go away. Permanently. Wyatt. Not like that, not the old way. Wyatt held up a hand. I promised my mother I'd do this right. That means no bodies, no midnight visits with baseball bats. I need to destroy him legally, make it so he can't hurt anyone ever again. Sterling nodded slowly. That's a harder road. I know. You'll need proof, evidence. Maddox didn't build this operation without being careful. There has to be something, some way to get to him. Then we start digging. A knock at the door interrupted them. Both men tensed. Wyatt's hand went to the knife on his belt. Expecting someone, Sterling asked quietly. No. Wyatt approached the door, looked through the peephole. A woman stood outside. 40s, dark blonde hair pulled back, wearing a tan uniform. Sheriff's deputy. He opened the door cautiously. Mr. Garrison, yes, I'm Deputy Lee Morrison. Can we talk? Wyatt glanced back at Sterling, who gave a slight nod. Wyatt stepped outside, closing the door behind him. Deputy Morrison looked nervous. Her eyes kept darting around the parking lot like she expected to be seen. What's this about? I know who's protecting Vincent Maddox. Wyatt went very still. Keep talking. Not here, too exposed. There's a diner on Route 17 about 5 miles north of town. Rosie's. Meet me there in an hour. I'll be in civilian clothes. Don't let anyone follow you. Why are you doing this? Morrison's jaw tightened. Because I became a cop to protect people. And right now, the people I'm supposed to protect are being hurt by someone who should be in prison. That doesn't sit right with me. You're risking your career. I'm aware. 1 hour. Come alone. She walked to her patrol car and drove off. Wyatt went back inside. Sterling was at the window, having watched the whole exchange. You trust her? Sterling asked. I don't know, but I don't have a lot of options right now. Want me to come with you? She said alone. And you always do what you're told, despite everything. Wyatt almost smiled. I'll be careful. You better be. Because if this is a setup, your mama's going to have to bury both of us, and I don't think her heart can take it. 50 minutes later, Wyatt was on his bike heading north on Route 17. He'd taken a deliberately circuitous route, watching for tails. Nothing. Either he was clean, or whoever might be following him was very good. Rosie's Diner was a relic from another era. Chrome and red vinyl neon sign flickering in the late afternoon sun. Half a dozen cars in the lot. Wyatt parked around back, out of sight from the road. Inside, the diner smelled like coffee and frying bacon. A handful of customers sat in booths, mostly truckers and locals. Country music played low from a jukebox in the corner. Deputy Morrison sat in a back booth, wearing jeans and a t-shirt. She'd let her hair down. Without the uniform, she looked younger, more vulnerable. Wyatt slid into the booth across from her. A waitress appeared immediately. Older woman, tired eyes, friendly smile. Coffee, please, Wyatt said. The waitress poured, topped off Morrison's cup and disappeared. Morrison waited until she was gone before speaking. Thank you for coming. You said you know who's protecting Maddox. I do. But before I tell you, I need to know something. What are you planning to do with this information? Take him down. Legally. Not with violence. I gave my word to my mother. I meant it. Morrison studied him for a long moment, then seemed to make a decision. It's Sheriff Holbrook. Wyatt felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. Randy, no, that's not possible. I know you two have history, but I've been watching him for 3 months. Ever since I started to suspect something was wrong. Wyatt, he's taking money from Maddox. A lot of money. How much I don't know exactly. But he's made deposits into an offshore account. I saw the routing numbers on his computer. And every time we get close to building a case against Redwood, Financial Holbrook shuts it down. Lack of evidence, he says. Not enough to proceed, but there's always enough. He just makes it disappear. Wyatt's mind was reeling. Randy, his childhood friend, the kid who'd cried at Wyatt's father's funeral, the teenager who'd talked about becoming a cop to make a difference, to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. How long had Randy been? 30 years, or was this recent, a good man broken by budget cuts and political pressure and the grinding poverty of a dying town? How do I know you're telling the truth? Morrison pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, then slid it across the table. The screen showed a photograph of a computer screen, bank records, Sheriff Randall Holbrook's name at the top, a series of deposits each for $10,000. The most recent was dated 3 weeks ago. I took that this morning. I could lose my badge just for having it. Then why help me? Because this isn't what I signed up for. I didn't become a deputy to watch old people get beaten and do nothing about it. I have a grandmother, 81 years old, lives alone. What Maddox is doing to your mother, he could do to anyone. To my grandmother, to anyone's grandmother. Someone has to stop him, even if it costs you your career, especially then. Because if I stay quiet, if I let this continue, what's my career worth anyway? Wyatt looked at this woman, this stranger who was risking everything, and felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. What do you need from me, he asked. I need you to help me get real evidence. The kind that will hold up in court. I have suspicions and photographs, but that's not enough. We need Maddox's files. His real books, not the sanitized versions he shows to auditors. We need proof of the threats, the violence, the extortion. How do we get that? That's what I'm still working on. But in the meantime, I need you to be careful. Don't confront Holbrook. Don't let him know you suspect anything. If he thinks we're on to him, he'll bury the evidence deeper or warn Maddox. How much time do we have? You said Maddox gave you 7 days. That's not a lot. It'll have to be enough. Morrison slid a business card across the table. It had only a phone number on it, handwritten. That's my personal cell. Burner phone. Don't call from your regular number. And be careful who you trust. What about you? How do I know I can trust you? Morrison smiled, but there was no humor in it. You don't. But right now, I'm the only ally you've got inside law enforcement. So I guess you'll have to take a leap of faith. She stood up, left a $10 bill on the table, and walked out. Wyatt sat there for a long moment, staring at the business card. Then he pulled out his phone and took a picture of Morrison's evidence before she got too far. He finished his coffee, left his own 10, and headed back to the motel. Sterling was waiting outside, leaning against his bike, smoking a cigarette. Well, it's worse than I thought. Wyatt told him everything. Sterling's expression darkened. The sheriff's dirty. That complicates things. Yeah, but it also explains why nothing's been done about Maddox, and why victims are too scared to come forward. If the law is compromised, who do you turn to? We need to move carefully. Morrison's right. We can't spook them. So what's next? Wyatt thought about it. We need to know more about Maddox's operation. How many victims? How the money flows? Who else is involved? That's going to take time we don't have. Then we work fast. Sterling crushed out his cigarette. There's one more thing you should know. While you were gone, I made some calls, asked around about Maddox. Turns out he's not just running a loan shark operation. He's moving opioids through Oak Ridge. Small scale, but profitable. Pills mostly, targeting the same demographic he loans to. Get them in debt, get them hooked, keep them dependent. Jesus, there's more. Remember Dorothy Caldwell, the woman who supposedly committed suicide 4 months ago? Yeah, she was one of Maddox's customers, both for the loans and the pills. Her daughter thinks she was murdered, but she can't prove it. We need to talk to the daughter. I got her address. They climbed on their bikes and rode across town to a modest neighborhood of small houses and chain-link fences. The Caldwell house was at the end of a cul-de-sac, the lawn overgrown, a for sale sign tilting in the front yard. A car was in the driveway. Someone was home. Wyatt knocked on the door. After a moment it opened. A woman in her early 50s stood there, boxes stacked behind her in the hallway. She looked exhausted. Yes, Linda Caldwell. Who's asking? My name's Wyatt Garrison. My mother is Evelyn Garrison. I believe she and your mother had something in common. Understanding flickered across Linda's face, followed quickly by grief. You'd better come in. The inside of the house was half-packed, furniture covered in sheets, pictures down from the walls, the feeling of a life being dismantled. Linda led them to this kitchen, the only room that still looked lived in. She gestured for them to sit at the table. I'm sorry about your mother, she said. Is she okay? She's in the hospital, recovering. You? Linda's eyes filled with tears. My mother's gone. So no, I'm not okay. I'm sorry for your loss. Don't be sorry. Be angry. Be furious. Because what happened to my mother shouldn't happen to anyone. Tell me about her. Linda took a shaky breath. Mom was 76, healthy, active. Then her furnace broke 2 winters ago. She needed a new one, didn't have the money. Someone told her about Redwood Financial. They gave her a $15,000 loan, 35% interest, same as my mother. Within a year, the debt had ballooned to $38,000. Mom was living on Social Security. She couldn't pay. They started sending men to the house, threatening her. One of them hit her, gave her a black eye. Did she report it to the sheriff's department? They did nothing, told her she needed proof, security camera footage, witnesses. She didn't have any of that. What happened then? Linda's voice broke. She started getting depressed, stopped going to church, stopped seeing her friends. I tried to help, but I have 3 kids and a mortgage of my own. I couldn't come up with $38,000. She wiped her eyes. Then one morning I got a call from a neighbor. Mom had been found in the garage, hanging from a rafter. The sheriff ruled it a suicide. But you don't think it was. My mother was terrified of heights, terrified. She wouldn't even climb a stepladder without someone holding it. The rafter she supposedly hanged herself from was 8 feet up. She would have had to climb a 6-foot ladder to reach it. Wyatt exchanged a look with Sterling. Did you tell this to the police? Of course I did. Sheriff Holbrook said grief makes people imagine things. Said my mother's fear of heights didn't mean she couldn't have overcome it in a moment of desperation. Do you believe that? No, I think Redwood killed her. I think they made it look like suicide, and I think the sheriff knows it and doesn't care. Linda stood up and left the room. When she came back, she was holding a cardboard box. This is everything I found in Mom's house related to Redwood. Letters, statements, even some recordings she made of their phone calls. She set the box on the table. I was going to throw it away. What's the point of keeping it? Nothing's going to happen to those people. They're untouchable. Not anymore, Wyatt said quietly. What are you going to do? Whatever it takes to make sure they can't hurt anyone else. Linda looked at him for a long moment. Take the box. If it helps, I'm glad. Mom deserves justice, even if it comes too late. Wyatt and Sterling carried the box out to the bikes. It was too large to fit in a saddlebag, so Sterling held it as Wyatt drove them back to the motel. Once inside, they spread the contents across the bed. Letters, financial statements, and at the bottom 3 cassette tapes labeled in shaky handwriting. Redwood calls. Evidence. You still have a tape player? Sterling asked. In the saddlebag. Old school, but it works. Wyatt retrieved the portable cassette player he'd kept for years, mostly for listening to old albums while riding. He inserted the first tape and pressed play. The voice that came through the speaker was elderly, female, frightened. Dorothy Caldwell. This is Dorothy Caldwell. It's October 3rd, 2023. I'm recording this because I need someone to know what's happening if something happens to me. A long pause. The sound of Dorothy gathering courage. The men from Redwood Financial came again today. The big one, Dalton, and another man I don't know. They said I needed to pay $5,000 by the end of the week or there would be consequences. I told them I didn't have it. Dalton grabbed my arm, twisted it, said accidents happen to old ladies who don't pay their debts, said I could fall down the stairs or forget to turn off the gas on my stove. He was threatening me. Another pause. Dorothy was crying. I don't know what to do. I tried calling the police, but Sheriff Holbrook said he couldn't help without proof. What more proof do they need? I'm so scared. I'm 81 years old and I'm scared in my own home. The tape ended. Wyatt felt sick. Sterling's face was carved from stone. The second tape was similar. More threats, more fear. The third tape was different. Dorothy's voice was steadier. Resigned. It's January 14th, 2024. This will be my last recording. They've won. I can't fight anymore. They're going to take my house. Everything my husband and I built. Everything I was going to leave to Linda and the grandchildren. It's all gone. A long silence. When Dorothy spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. I won't let them have the satisfaction of watching me lose everything. I won't let them see me humiliated. I'm going to end this on my own terms. The tape ended. Wyatt turned it off. The motel room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioner. She didn't kill herself, Sterling said flatly. They killed her and made it look like suicide. Yeah, we need to take this to someone. FBI, state police, someone outside Oak Ridge. With what tapes of an old woman being threatened? That proves harassment maybe, not murder. And without Dorothy alive to testify, it's just recordings. Then what do we do? Wyatt was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out the business card Deputy Morrison had given him. We get inside Redwood's operation. Get the real evidence. How, I don't know yet. But we've got 6 days to figure it out. His phone rang. Unknown number. Wyatt answered. Mr. Garrison, a woman's voice, professional, cold. Who is this? This is Oak Ridge Community Hospital. I'm calling about Evelyn Garrison. Wyatt's blood turned to ice. What's wrong? There was an incident tonight. Someone attempted to enter her room. Security intervened, but we thought you should know. Is she okay? She's physically unharmed, but she's very shaken. And Mr. Garrison, the man who tried to enter her room, presented a visitor badge that appeared legitimate. We only caught him because one of our nurses recognized him from a previous incident. What previous incident? He was here 3 weeks ago. Another elderly patient filed a complaint about him being threatening. We asked him to leave, but never got his name. What did he look like? The nurse described Dalton McKenzie perfectly. I'm coming to the hospital. Now. Wyatt hung up and looked at Sterling. They went after my mother. In the hospital. Sterling was on his feet instantly. Let's go. They rode hard through the darkening streets. The sun had set, leaving the desert sky streaked with purple and gold. Beautiful. Deceptive. Like everything else in this town. At the hospital, they found Evelyn awake in her room, a nurse with her. Evelyn's face was pale, her hands trembling. When she saw Wyatt, she burst into tears. He was at her bedside, immediately gathering her into his arms as gently as he could. I'm here, Mom. You're safe, he said. He said if you didn't pay, he'd come back. He'd finish what he started. He's not going to touch you again. I promise. Dr. Hayes appeared in the doorway. Mr. Garrison, we've increased security on this floor. But I'm going to be honest with you. We're a small hospital. We don't have the resources for round-the-clock protection. And frankly, if someone is determined to harm your mother, I'm not sure we can stop them. Then I'm taking her somewhere safe. She's not ready to be discharged. I don't care. Wherever I take her will be safer than here. Where Wyatt looked at Sterling. I have a place, Sterling said. Cabin in the mountains, 50 miles north, off the grid. No one knows about it except me and a few brothers. She'd need medical care. I can handle basic care, Sterling interrupted. I was a medic in the Gulf War, first one back in '91. I've kept my skills sharp. Dr. Hayes looked between them, clearly weighing her legal obligations against practical reality. If you sign her out against medical advice, I can't stop you. But Mr. Garrison, your mother has broken ribs. She needs rest and monitoring. She'll get both. Just somewhere those bastards can't find her. 20 minutes later, Evelyn was dressed and in a wheelchair. Hospital policy, they said. She had to be wheeled out. Wyatt pushed the chair while Sterling brought both bikes around. There was no way to transport Evelyn on a motorcycle. We need a car, Wyatt said. I'm on it. Sterling disappeared and returned 15 minutes later in a dark blue Suburban with tinted windows. Borrowed it from a friend who owes me a favor. We can use it as long as we need. They helped Evelyn into the back seat. She was weak, moving slowly, every breath clearly painful. Wyatt climbed in beside her while Sterling drove. The Harley would have to stay at the hospital for now. Wyatt would retrieve it later. As they pulled out of the parking lot, Wyatt looked back at the hospital, then at the town of Oak Ridge disappearing behind them. 7 days had become 6, and somewhere in those 6 days, he had to find a way to destroy Vincent Maddox, protect his mother, and somehow stay on the right side of the law he'd spent most of his life ignoring. The Suburban climbed into the mountains. The lights of Oak Ridge faded. Evelyn fell asleep against Wyatt's shoulder, her breathing slow and shallow. Sterling drove in silence, taking switchbacks and dirt roads Wyatt didn't recognize. Finally, after nearly 2 hours, they turned onto a barely visible trail that led through dense pine forest. The cabin appeared suddenly. Small, dark wood, solar panels on the roof, no other structures visible for miles. Home sweet home, Sterling said. They got Evelyn inside and settled on the couch with blankets and pillows. The cabin was sparse but clean. One large room serving as kitchen, dining, and living area, a loft above. Wood stove in the corner. Sterling got a fire going while Wyatt checked his mother's vitals. Her pulse was steady, breathing regular. She seemed more at peace here than she had in the hospital. She'll be okay, Sterling said quietly. Get some sleep. We'll figure out next steps in the morning. But Wyatt couldn't sleep. He sat by the fire watching the flames, his mind racing. They'd saved his mother for now, but this wasn't over. Maddox would come looking. And when he did, what then? His phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. This is Lee Morrison. I heard about the hospital incident. Is your mother safe? Wyatt hesitated, then replied, yes, for now. Good, we need to meet. Tomorrow, same place, noon. I have information. What kind of information? The kind that could end this. But we need to move fast. Wyatt looked at the phone for a long moment, then typed back, I'll be there. He put the phone away and stared into the fire. 5 days left. 5 days to take down a criminal organization, expose a corrupt sheriff, and somehow keep his mother alive. The old Wyatt would have handled this with violence, quick, Brutal, effective in the short term, disastrous in the long term. But he'd given his word to his mother, to himself. This time he'd do it right, even if right was harder, even if right meant trusting people he barely knew, even if right meant going up against forces that had been killing people and getting away with it for years. Sterling appeared beside him, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He passed one to Wyatt. "You thinking about breaking your promise?" Sterling asked. "Every minute, but you won't." "No, I won't." "Good, because the Wyatt who kept promises is a better man than the Wyatt who broke them." They sat in silence, drinking coffee, watching the fire burn low. Outside, the mountain night was cold and dark and full of stars. Inside, 2 old bikers kept watch over a sleeping woman who'd suffered too much and deserved better. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, but tonight Evelyn Garrison was safe, and that was enough. For now, the first light of morning came cold and gray through the cabin windows. Wyatt hadn't slept. He'd sat by his mother's side all night, watching her breathe, counting each rise and fall of her chest like a prayer. Evelyn stirred as sunlight touched her face. Her eyes opened confused for a moment, then clearing as she remembered where she was. "Wyatt, I'm here, Mom." She reached for his hand. Her grip was weak but steady. "Where are we? Somewhere safe?" "Sterling's cabin. No one knows we're here." Evelyn looked around the rustic space, taking in the wood walls, the stone fireplace, the simple furnishings. A small smile touched her lips. "Your father would have loved this place. He always talked about building a cabin in the mountains. Just the 3 of us, away from everything." Wyatt felt the familiar ache in his chest. His father had died when those dreams were still just dreams. "How do you feel?" "Sore, but better, safer." She squeezed his hand. "Thank you for getting me out of there. I should have been here months ago, years ago. This never would have happened if I'd—" "Stop!" Evelyn's voice was firm despite her weakness. "What happened isn't your fault. It's the fault of bad men doing bad things. Don't carry their guilt, Wyatt." Sterling emerged from the loft, moving quietly down the ladder. He changed into clean clothes, his white hair pulled back neatly. "Morning, Mrs. Garrison. How are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a truck." "But Sterling, please call me Evelyn." "Yes, ma'am," Sterling smiled. "I'm going to check your ribs if that's okay. Make sure nothing's shifted overnight." While Sterling examined Evelyn with practiced hands, Wyatt stepped outside. The mountain air was crisp, scented with pine and earth. Birds called from the trees. Peaceful. The kind of peace Wyatt had never been good at accepting. His phone showed 7:43 a.m. The meeting with Deputy Morrison wasn't until noon. 5 hours to wait. 5 hours to think about everything that could go wrong. He walked the perimeter of the cabin, checking sight lines, escape routes. Old habits from a life spent looking over his shoulder. The cabin was well positioned. Dense forest on 3 sides. A clear view down the access road. Anyone approaching would be visible long before they arrived. Sterling joined him outside. "She's doing okay. Ribs are healing, no signs of infection. But she needs rest. Real rest. Weeks of it. Weeks we don't have." "I know. What's the plan?" "Meet with Morrison at noon. See what information she has. Then—" Wyatt trailed off. He didn't know what came after. Everything depended on what Morrison had found. "I'll stay here with your mother," Sterling said. "You go do what needs doing. But Wyatt, be smart. These people have already tried to kill Evelyn once. They won't hesitate to try again. Or to kill you. I'll be careful. I've known you 41 years. Careful isn't really your style. Maybe it's time to learn." Wyatt went back inside. Evelyn was sitting up now, sipping water. Some color had returned to her face. "I need to go into town," he told her. "Sterling will stay with you. You'll be safe here." Fear flickered across Evelyn's face. "You're going after them, aren't you? After that Maddox man. I'm going to end this. The right way." "What's the right way?" "The way that doesn't end with me in prison or you in danger." Evelyn set down her water glass. "Wyatt, I need to tell you something. About your father." Wyatt sat down beside her. "I know about Frank Brennan, the supervisor at the mill. I know Dad's death might not have been an accident." Evelyn's eyes widened. "How did you? Sheriff Holbrook showed me old case files. There was a witness who heard Dad arguing with Brennan about safety violations, about payoffs." Tears began sliding down Evelyn's cheeks. "I've lived with that knowledge for 43 years, never knowing for sure, never able to prove it. They said it was an accident. The insurance company paid out. Everyone moved on. But I knew. A wife knows. Why didn't you tell me you were 20 years old, angry, grieving? If I told you your father was murdered, what would you have done?" Wyatt was quiet. She was right. At 20, he would have gone after Brennan with everything he had, would have ended up in prison or dead. When I borrowed money from Redwood, Evelyn continued, I didn't know Frank Brennan worked there. When I saw him at their office, I almost had a heart attack. He was older gray, but I recognized him immediately. And he recognized me. He smiled, Wyatt, smiled like he was glad to see me. What did he say? Nothing specific, just pleasantries. But there was something in his eyes, like he knew I could never do anything about Robert, like he'd gotten away with it and there was nothing I could do. Did you tell Brennan's boss Maddox's number? I was too scared. And then Brennan died about a year later. Heart attack, they said. I thought maybe it was over. But then the loan payments became impossible and the men started coming and she couldn't continue. Wyatt pulled her close, careful of her injuries. It's going to be over soon, Mom, I promise. Maddox is going to pay for what he's done, not just to you, to everyone. How I'm still figuring that out. At 11:30, Wyatt left the cabin. Sterling walked him to the Suburban. You armed, Sterling asked. Knife. Sterling reached into his jacket and pulled out a compact Glock. Take this, just in case. Wyatt hesitated. Carrying a gun into what was supposed to be a peaceful meeting with a cop felt wrong. But so did walking into potential danger unarmed. He took the gun, checked the magazine, tucked it into his waistband. Thanks. Bring it back unused. That's the plan. The drive down the mountain took an hour. Wyatt kept checking his mirrors, watching for tails. Nothing. The roads were empty. He reached Rosie's diner at 11:58. Deputy Morrison's car was already there, parked around back where he'd left his bike the day before. Inside, Morrison sat in the same booth wearing civilian clothes again. But today, she looked different. Harder. Determined. Wyatt slid into the booth across from her. The same waitress appeared with coffee. Neither of them spoke until she left. Your mother, Morrison asked. Safe, out of town. Good, because things are about to get complicated. More complicated than a corrupt sheriff and a criminal enterprise. Morrison pulled a manila folder from her bag and slid it across the table. I spent all night going through Holbrook's files. Everything he's buried or misdirected over the past 5 years. It's worse than I thought. Wyatt opened the folder. Inside were copies of police reports, witness statements, financial records, all related to Redwood Financial. 23 victims, Morrison said quietly. That we know of. All elderly, all targeted with predatory loans. At least 5 of them died under suspicious circumstances. Dorothy Caldwell was just the most recent. Holbrook buried all of this. Buried misdirected or actively sabotaged. Take Lawrence Henderson died 2 years ago, supposed carbon monoxide poisoning. His daughter swore he'd just had his furnace inspected 2 weeks prior. But Holbrook ruled it accidental. Or Margaret Foster fell down her stairs and broke her neck. Except Margaret had a stair lift because she couldn't walk. How did she fall when she never used the stairs? Wyatt felt sick. This wasn't just extortion. This was serial murder. Why? Why is Holbrook protecting these people? Money. I found records of offshore transfers. Over the past 4 years, Holbrook's received almost $1 million. $1 million in increments small enough not to trigger federal reporting requirements. 20,000 here, 15,000 there. He's been careful, but not careful enough. This is enough to arrest him. Maybe, but I'm just a deputy. If I go to the state police with this, Holbrook will claim I fabricated it. His word against mine. He's been sheriff for 12 years. I've been a deputy for 4. Who do you think they'll believe? Then what do? We need Maddox's records, the real ones showing the extortion, the threats, the payments to Holbrook. With both sides of the transaction documented, neither of them can deny it. How do we get into Redwood's offices? That's where you come in. Morrison pulled out another document, a legal-looking paper with official letterhead. What's this? It's called a civil investigative demand. It's used in cases of suspected fraud. It gives law enforcement the right to examine business records. You have one of these? Not yet. But I know someone who can issue it, Judge Harold Briggs. He's retired, but he still has authority in civil matters. And he hates Maddox. Why, his wife died last year, Margaret Briggs. She was one of Redwood's victims. The judge didn't know about the loan until after she died, found the paperwork in her things. $50,000 debt from a $10,000 loan. Will he help? I already asked him. He said yes. But Wyatt, this has to be done exactly right. If we go in there and Maddox refuses to comply, we need to be ready to force the issue. That means having enough evidence to justify a search warrant if he stonewalls. Do we have that? With Dorothy Caldwell's recordings and your mother's testimony, we might. But your mother would have to be willing to testify. Wyatt thought about Evelyn. Weak, injured, terrified. I don't know if she can. Then we need to find another way. The waitress refilled their coffee. Wyatt waited until she was gone again. When would we do this? Tomorrow. Afternoon. I'll serve the demand with another deputy I trust. Someone who's not on Holbrook's payroll. You and your friend Sterling wait outside. If things go sideways, if Maddox tries to destroy evidence or flee, you stop him. You're asking me to break the law. I'm asking you to help me enforce it. There's a difference, a fine one, but a real one. Wyatt stared at the documents spread across the table. This was a plan, a real plan that didn't involve violence or revenge. The kind of plan his mother would approve of. But it required trusting Morrison, trusting that she wasn't setting him up, trusting that Judge Briggs wasn't compromised, trusting in a system that had failed his mother, failed Dorothy Caldwell, failed 23 victims. What time tomorrow? 2 p.m. Meet me here at 1:30. We'll go in together. Okay, Morrison started gathering the documents. There's one more thing. Dalton McKenzie, the Ox. He's got warrants out of Nevada. Aggravated assault from 2018. He jumped bail and disappeared. If we can ID him, we can have him arrested immediately. How do we ID him? I need a clear photograph, and I need him to do something that puts him in violation of parole, something I can witness. An idea formed in Wyatt's mind, dangerous, probably stupid, but it might work. What if I could get him to threaten me in front of you? That's entrapment. Not if he does it voluntarily. Not if I just happen to be somewhere and he happens to threaten me and you happen to witness it. Morrison studied him carefully. What are you thinking? I go back to Redwood. Alone, Sal. Tell Maddox I have his money. Ask to meet somewhere public to make the exchange. Maddox sends Dalton. Dalton tries to intimidate me or worse. You're there in plain clothes recording everything. Once you have what you need, you arrest him. That puts you in danger. I've been in danger since I rolled into town. If Dalton has a weapon, if he tries to kill you, that's a risk I'm willing to take. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. This could work, but it has to look real. Maddox is smart. If he smells a setup, he'll walk. Then we make sure he doesn't smell anything. They spent the next hour working out details. Location, timing, what Wyatt would say, what Morrison would do if things went wrong. By the time they finished, Wyatt felt the old familiar sensation, the pre-fight adrenaline, the sharpening of senses, the clarity that came when violence was a real possibility. He'd spent decades learning to channel that feeling, to use it without letting it control him. Today would test whether he'd actually learned anything. Morrison left first. Wyatt waited 10 minutes, then followed. He didn't go back to the cabin immediately. Instead, he drove to downtown Oak Ridge and parked outside Redwood Financial. The building looked innocent in the afternoon sun. White walls, manicured lawn, the kind of place that could be selling insurance or real estate. Wyatt got out of the Suburban and walked to the entrance, pushed open the door. The same receptionist looked up. Her eyes widened when she recognized him. I need to see Maddox, Wyatt said. Mr. Maddox isn't. Tell him I have his money. All of it. And I want to settle my mother's debt today. The receptionist picked up her phone, spoke quietly. Hung up. He'll see you. This time Maddox came down the stairs himself, still impeccably dressed, still radiating that cold confidence. Mr. Garrison, what a pleasant surprise. You said you have the money, $47,000. But I'm not bringing it here. Maddox's eyes narrowed slightly. No, I don't trust you. For all I know, you take the money and still hurt my mother. So we do this in public. Witnesses, you bring the debt paperwork, I bring the key. We make the exchange. You mark the debt, paid in full, and sign it. Then we're done. An abundance of caution. Call it what you want. Those are my terms. Maddox smiled. And if I refuse, then I take the money and disappear. You never see me or my mother again. And you can chase a $47,000 debt across state lines for years and never collect a dime. It was a bluff. Wyatt didn't have $47,000. He didn't have $5,000. But Maddox didn't know that. Where and when, Maddox asked. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., the town square. There's a bench by the fountain, public, open, safe for both of us. I'll send Dalton with the paperwork. Fine, I'll be there with the money. Mr. Garrison, Maddox stepped closer, lowering his voice. If you're trying to be clever, if this is some kind of trap, you should know that I have resources you can't imagine. And my patience with you and your family has limits. No trap, just a transaction. You get your money, I get my mother's freedom. Everyone walks away. Maddox studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., don't be late. Wyatt turned and walked out without another word. His hands were shaking as he climbed back into the Suburban. The performance had worked. Maddox bought it. Now they just had to execute the rest of the plan without anyone getting killed. He drove back to the cabin as the sun began its descent toward the western mountains. The temperature was dropping. Winter still held the high country in its grip. Sterling met him at the door. Well, it's happening tomorrow, 3 p.m. And the deputy, she'll be there, recording everything. When Dalton makes his move, she arrests him. With him in custody, we use the civil investigative demand to get into Redwood's records. We find proof of the extortion and Holbrook's involvement. Then we turn everything over to the state police or the FBI. Sterling whistled low. That's a lot of moving parts. I know. What could go wrong? Everything. But it's the best chance we've got. Inside, Evelyn was awake, sitting by the fire with a blanket over her lap. She looked better, stronger, but still fragile. How was your meeting, she asked. Wyatt sat beside her and told her everything. The plan, the risks, the possibility that by this time tomorrow, the men who'd hurt her would be behind bars. Evelyn listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You're putting yourself in danger, she said finally. I've been in danger before. Not like this. These men kill people, Wyatt. They killed Dorothy Caldwell. They might have killed your father. What makes you think they won't kill you? Because I'm expecting it, and I'm ready for it. No mother should have to worry about her son dying because of her debts. This isn't about debt anymore, Mom. This is about justice for you, for Dorothy, for Dad, for everyone Maddox has hurt. Evelyn reached out and touched his face. Her hand was cool and soft. You've become the man your father wanted you to be. Did you know that he'd be so proud? Wyatt felt his throat tighten. I don't know about that. I do. Robert always said a real man protects those who can't protect themselves. That's exactly what you're doing. Sterling cleared his throat from across the room. Hate to interrupt, but we need to talk logistics. If this goes bad tomorrow, we need contingencies. They spent the next 2 hours planning. Escape routes if the meeting turned violent. What to do if Holbrook showed up. How to protect Evelyn if Wyatt ended up arrested, or worse. By the time they finished, it was dark outside. Sterling made dinner canned soup and bread, simple but warm. They ate together by the fire. Wyatt tried to sleep that night, but couldn't. He lay in the loft, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the cabin. His mother's breathing, Sterling's occasional movements, the pop and crackle of dying embers. Tomorrow would change everything. One way or another, either Maddox would go down and his mother would be free, or the plan would fail and everything would get worse. There was no middle ground. Wyatt must have dozed eventually because he woke to morning light and the smell of coffee. Sterling was already up, moving quietly around the kitchen. Big day, Sterling said when he saw Wyatt descending the ladder. Yeah, you ready? As ready as I'll ever be. Evelyn woke shortly after. She was moving better this morning, the pain medication and rest doing their work. She insisted on making breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast. Wyatt tried to tell her to rest, but she waved him off. I need to do something useful. I need to feel normal. So they ate breakfast together. A family meal, maybe the first real one they'd had in 8 years. At noon, Wyatt prepared to leave. He checked the Glock Sterling had given him. Loaded, safety on, tucked into his waistband. Sterling walked him to the Suburban. I'll keep my phone on. Anything goes wrong, you call. I can be in town in 45 minutes. Take care of her. You know I will. Wyatt climbed in and started the engine. Before he could pull away, his mother appeared at the door of the cabin. She walked slowly to the vehicle, leaning on the doorframe for support. Wyatt, she called. He rolled down the window. Evelyn reached through and took his hand. Come back to me. Whatever happens, whatever you have to do, come back. I will, Mom. I promise. I lost your father. I can't lose you too. You won't. She squeezed his hand once more, then let go. Wyatt drove down the mountain with his mother's image in the rearview mirror, growing smaller and smaller, until the trees swallowed her up. At 1:30, he met Deputy Morrison at Rosie's diner. She was in plain clothes again, but Wyatt could see the outline of her service weapon under her jacket. You sure about this? She asked. No, but we're doing it anyway. I'll be in position by 2:45, across the square. I'll have a camera with a telephotos lens, tourists taking pictures. As soon as Dalton makes a threat or a move, I'll intervene. And if Maddox comes instead of Dalton, same plan. But I doubt he will. Men like Maddox don't do their own dirty work. They went over the plan one more time. Then Morrison left. Wyatt sat alone in the diner drinking coffee. He didn't want watching the clock tick toward 3 p.m. At 2:40, he paid and walked out. The town square was in the center of Old Oak Ridge, a small park with trees, a fountain, benches, a statue of some long-dead town founder. This time of day, there were a few people around. Mothers with children, a jogger, an old man feeding pigeons. Witnesses. That was good. Wyatt sat on the bench Maddox had specified. The fountain burbled behind him. He could see most of the square from here. At 2:55, he spotted Morrison. She was on the far side of the square, wearing a sun hat and carrying a camera, taking pictures of the fountain like any tourist might. At 3 p.m. exactly, a black pickup truck pulled up to the curb. The same one Wyatt had seen at his mother's house that first day. Dalton McKenzie climbed out, 6'5" of muscle and menace. He wore jeans and a leather jacket. No attempt to hide what he was. Dalton approached the bench, slowly scanning the area, looking for threats, looking for a setup. Wyatt stayed seated, relaxed, hands visible. Dalton stopped a few feet away. "You got the money, you got the paperwork." Dalton pulled a folded document from his jacket. "Debt settlement agreement. Sign this, pay the $47,000, and your mother's free. Let me see it first." Dalton tossed the paper onto the bench. Wyatt picked it up and read through it. Standard legal language, debt amount, settlement terms, a signature line at the bottom for both parties. "Seems legitimate," Wyatt said. "It is. Now where's the money? I need to know something first. Did you kill Dorothy Caldwell?" Dalton's expression didn't change. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The old woman who supposedly hanged herself. Except she was terrified of heights. Except you'd threatened her the week before she died." "You're wasting my time. Did you kill my father?" "Back in 1981, I would have been 10 years old in 1981. So no, but Maddox knew Frank Brennan, the man who killed him." Dalton took a step closer. His voice dropped to a threatening rumble. "Listen to me, old man. You're playing a dangerous game. You think you're smart coming here in public, thinking that keeps you safe. But accidents happen anywhere, to anyone." Across the square, Morrison had stopped taking pictures. Her camera was now pointed directly at them. "Is that a threat?" Wyatt asked loudly. "Clearly. It's a fact. Now give me the money or get the hell out of here before I lose my patience." "I don't have any money." Dalton's eyes went cold. "What, I don't have $47,000. I never did. This was just to get you here." Understanding dawned on Dalton's face. Then rage. "You son of a—" He lunged forward, reaching for Wyatt. Wyatt was ready. He pushed off the bench, moving to the side. But Dalton was fast for a big man. His hand caught Wyatt's jacket, yanked him forward. "You're dead," Dalton hissed. "You and your mother both." "Dalton McKenzie Sheriff's Department. Get your hands up." Morrison was running across the square, weapon drawn, badge held high. Dalton released Wyatt and spun toward Morrison. For a second, Wyatt thought he might run. Then Dalton's hand went to his own waistband, reaching for something. "Gun," Morrison shouted. Wyatt reacted on instinct. He tackled Dalton from behind, driving him forward. Both men crashed to the ground. Dalton was bigger, but Wyatt had surprise and momentum. He got an arm around Dalton's throat, squeezing, trying to control the bigger man's weapon hand. Morrison was there seconds later, kicking the gun away from Dalton's reaching fingers. It skittered across the pavement, a snub-nosed revolver. Don't move, Dalton bucked and thrashed, trying to throw Wyatt off. But Morrison had her weapon pressed to the base of Dalton's skull. "I will shoot you if you move again. Do you understand me?" Dalton went still, hands behind your back. "Now." Slowly, Dalton complied. Morrison holstered her weapon and pulled out handcuffs. Within seconds, Dalton was cuffed and face down on the pavement. Wyatt climbed to his feet, breathing hard. His ribs ached. His hands were shaking from adrenaline. A small crowd had gathered. The mothers with children had fled, but other people were watching, phones out, recording. Good. Let them record. Let there be witnesses. A patrol car pulled up, lights flashing. 2 deputies jumped out. Morrison flashed her badge. "Deputy Morrison, I've just arrested Dalton McKenzie on assault charges and weapons violations. He's also wanted in Nevada on felony warrants. Get him to the station." The deputies hauled Dalton to his feet. He glared at Wyatt with pure hatred. "This isn't over," Dalton said. "Yeah," Wyatt replied. "It is." They loaded Dalton into the patrol car and drove away. Morrison turned to Wyatt. "You okay?" "Yeah, you better than okay. I got everything on camera. The threats, the gun, all of it. What happens now?" "Now we go to Judge Briggs. With Dalton in custody and this evidence, we have probable cause. The judge issues the civil investigative demand. We go into Redwood Financial and seize their records. When right now, before Maddox has time to destroy anything." An hour later, Wyatt sat in Judge Harold Briggs' home office. The judge was in his 70s, white-haired and dignified. His eyes were sharp despite his age. Morrison laid out everything. The recordings from Dorothy Caldwell, the evidence of Holbrook's corruption, the attack on Evelyn, Dalton's arrest. Judge Briggs listened in silence. When Morrison finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "My wife died because of these people," he said finally. I didn't know about the loan until after she was gone. She'd hidden it from me. $50,000 from a $10,000 loan. The stress of it likely contributed to her heart attack. He looked at Wyatt. Your mother is lucky to have a son willing to fight for her. Margaret had no one but me, and I was too old, too tired to see what was happening until it was too late. The judge pulled out a legal pad and began writing. His hand was steady despite his age. I'm issuing a civil investigative demand for all financial records, client files, and communications from Redwood Financial Group for the past 5 years. Deputy Morrison, you'll serve this demand immediately. If Mr. Maddox refuses to comply, you have my authorization to seek a search warrant. He signed the document with a flourish. Go shut them down. Morrison took the document. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me. Just make sure these bastards pay for what they've done. Outside the judge's house, Morrison called for backup. Within minutes, 3 patrol cars arrived. 6 deputies in total, all of them people Morrison trusted. People not on Holbrook's payroll. Where's the sheriff? Wyatt asked. I made sure he was busy. Told him there was a domestic dispute on the north side of town. By the time he realizes what's happening, we'll already be inside Redwood. They drove in convoy to the Redwood Financial Building. Morrison in the lead, Wyatt following in the Suburban. The sun was setting as they pulled up. The white building glowed in the fading light. Morrison led the way inside. Wyatt stayed back watching from the Suburban. This was law enforcement business now. He was just an observer. Through the windows, he could see Morrison presenting the document to the receptionist, saw the young woman's face go pale, saw her pick up the phone. Moments later, Vincent Maddox appeared at the top of the stairs. Even from a distance, Wyatt could see the fury on his face. Maddox and Morrison spoke. Morrison gestured to the document. Maddox shook his head. The conversation grew heated. Then Morrison made a call. More patrol cars arrived. 8 deputies now. They entered the building. Maddox made a call of his own. Wyatt knew who he was calling, Sheriff Holbrook. 10 minutes later, Holbrook's car screeched into the parking lot. The sheriff jumped out and stormed into the building. Wyatt couldn't hear what was being said, but he could see the confrontation through the windows. Holbrook was shouting. Morrison stood her ground, holding up the civil investigative demand. Then something unexpected happened. Morrison pulled out her phone and showed Holbrook something on the screen. The sheriff's face went white. He staggered back like he'd been punched. The offshore bank records. She was showing him proof of his own corruption. Holbrook looked around wildly, at the deputies, at Maddox, at Morrison. Then he turned and walked out of the building. He got in his car and sat there, head in his hands. Inside, the deputies began collecting boxes of files, computer hard drives, everything that might contain evidence. Maddox stood in the center of his lobby, watching his empire being dismantled. His face was a mask of cold fury. An hour later, Morrison emerged carrying a banker's box full of files. She loaded it into her patrol car, then walked over to the Suburban. We got it. All of it. Client files with notations about threats and violence. Financial records showing payments to Holbrook. Communications with Dalton about collections. It's over, Wyatt. We have enough to prosecute everyone involved. What about Holbrook? He's sitting in his car. He knows it's over. State police are already en route. They'll take him into custody. And Maddox, he'll be arrested tonight. Multiple counts of extortion, racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder. He's going to prison for the rest of his life. Wyatt felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been tight and hard since he'd found his mother bleeding on her kitchen floor. It's really over. The legal part is just beginning. But yes, they can't hurt anyone else. Not anymore. Wyatt watched as more deputies carried boxes out of the building. Maddox was let out in handcuffs. His expensive suit rumpled his face expressionless. As he passed the Suburban, Maddox turned and looked directly at Wyatt. Their eyes met. Maddox smiled. Cold. Empty. See you around Garrison, no, Wyatt said quietly. You won't. They loaded Maddox into a patrol car and drove away. Sheriff Holbrook was arrested 15 minutes later. He didn't resist, just sat there with tears running down his face as the state police read him his rights. By the time the sun had fully set, Redwood Financial Group's offices were dark and empty. Yellow crime scene tapes stretched across the entrance. Morrison walked back to where Wyatt sat in the Suburban. Go home, she said. Go back to your mother. Tell her she's safe. Tell her it's over. What about you? I have about 40 hours of paperwork ahead of me. But it's worth it. Thank you for everything. Morrison smiled. Thank you for trusting me. Not many people would have taken that leap. You earned it. Wyatt started the engine and drove out of Oak Ridge as night fell. The mountain road was dark lit only by his headlights. But he knew the way. He pulled up to Sterling's cabin at 8:30. Sterling met him at the door. Well, it's done. Sterling's face broke into a rare smile. All of it, Dalton's in custody, Maddox is in custody, Holbrook is in custody, Redwood is shut down, the state police and FBI are taking over the investigation. It's over. Your mother will want to hear this herself. Inside, Evelyn was sitting by the fire. When she saw Wyatt's face, she knew. He crossed the room and knelt beside her chair. It's over, Mom. They can't hurt you anymore. Any of them. Evelyn burst into tears. Wyatt held her while she cried, all the fear and pain and grief of the past months pouring out. Sterling quietly stepped outside, giving them privacy. I can't believe it, Evelyn said finally. I thought I'd have to live in fear for the rest of my life. Not anymore. You're free. The debt is void. The loan was illegal. You won't owe a penny. And the house, it's still yours. All yours. Evelyn touched Wyatt's face, her fingers trembling. You did this. You came home and you saved me. We saved each other, Mom. They sat together by the fire, mother and son, until Evelyn fell asleep against Wyatt's shoulder. Sterling came back inside and helped Wyatt move Evelyn to the couch, covering her with blankets. The two men sat at the kitchen table sharing a bottle of whiskey Sterling had stashed away. What now, Sterling asked. Now I stay. Take care of Mom. Maybe reopen Dad's garage. Make a life here. You sure Oak Ridge isn't exactly a biker town? I'm not exactly a biker anymore. Sterling raised his glass. To coming home. To home, Wyatt echoed. They drank in silence, listening to the fire crackle and Evelyn's soft breathing. Outside, the mountain night was cold and clear. Stars filled the sky, bright and eternal. Wyatt thought about his father, about the letter Robert had written 43 years ago, about justice delayed but finally delivered. A real man protects those who can't protect themselves. Wyatt had done that, not with fists and violence like the old days, but with courage and perseverance and a willingness to trust in something bigger than himself. He'd kept his promise to his mother, and in doing so he'd found his way home, not to a place, but to himself.